You guys know, right? I mean, C.S. Lewis and I are like this, peas in a pod, bosom brothers. All right, so one of the most influential books in my life as an adult was Surprised by Joy by C.S. Lewis. As a child, I read the Chronicles of Narnia, I read the Space Trilogy, and as a tween and teen, I read a lot of his essays, and they continue to delight and inform me as an adult. C.S. Lewis is one of the most formative people in my life, and I look forward to meeting him one day in glory. Well, famously, in fact, there's a movie I guess has come out recently, which I have no idea about if it's any good or whatever, but that will continue to make this even famouser. But Lewis was an atheist for a long time. And this video is about the importance of you being beautiful and making beautiful things for evangelistic reasons. Beauty is gospel proclamation. And, a lot of people will talk about, they don't use, it's not seemly, it's not comely. What's the word they use? Seemly, comely, approachable, winsome, right? People say winsome. You should be winsome. But winsomeness as a gospel thing is often sort of put out there as an excuse not to actually proclaim the gospel. Just sit in the corner and be pretty. It's the sitting in the corner part that's a problem. No one's winsome sitting in the corner. So get out there, rock some beauty, and you can change lives and you can proclaim Jesus Christ by doing that. And I want to talk about that through C.S. Lewis's experience and mine with the same poem, a poem that I read as a youth before knowing the impact that it had on C.S. Lewis. That I didn't read Surprised by Joy until I was an adult. It actually took me a long time to get around to it. All right, so C.S. Lewis, in the beginning of Surprised by Joy, talks about Northerness and really the longing for joy that haunted him, that pursued him through his life. And when he wasn't a Christian, how he knew he longed for something else. And one of the key moments of that for him came when he read a Henry Wadsworth Longfellow poem. Longfellow, I believe, was from Maine, so like the northernness was, there, and the poem was called Tegner's Drapa. So a very Nordic, very Scandinavian, very Viking sort of story from this American poet. So he wrote Tegner. So Longfellow wrote Tegner's Drapa, and then 100 years later, C.S. Lewis read it, and the poem opens with the following words: "I heard a voice that cried, 'Balder the Beautiful is dead, is dead.'" Balder the Beautiful is dead, is dead. Pardon me. And here's what Lewis says about his reaction. "I knew nothing about Balder, but instantly I was uplifted into huge regions of northern sky. I desired with almost sickening intensity something never to be described, except that it is cold, spacious, severe, pale, and remote. And then, as in the other examples, found myself at the very same moment already falling out of that desire and wishing I were back in it." And then he later on in the same chapter, talking about this northernness, pure northernness engulfed me. This is when he encounters Wagner. "A vision of huge clear spaces hanging above the Atlantic, the endless twilight of northern summer. remoteness, severity, and almost at the same time, I knew that I had met this before long, long ago. It hardly seems longer now, in Tegner's Drapa. That Siegfried, whatever it might be, belonged to the same world as Balder and the sunward sailing cranes. And with that plunge back into my own past, there arose at once, almost like heartbreak, the memory of joy itself. That's the most important, I think, line in Surprised by Joy. The knowledge that I once had, what I had now lacked for years, that I was returning at last from exile in desert lands to my own country, and the distance of the twilight of the gods and the distance of my own past joy, both unattainable, flowed together into a single, unendurable sense of desire and loss, which suddenly became one with the loss of the whole experience, which, as I now stared around that dusty schoolroom like a man recovering from unconsciousness, had already vanished, had eluded me at the very moment when I could first say, "It is." And at once I knew, with fatal knowledge, that to have it again was the supreme and only important object of my desire. So he encounters two works of art that convince him that to have this joy again, this joy that he caught a fleeting glimpse of and then it was torn from him, when he read the words, "I heard a voice that cried, Balder the Beautiful is dead, is dead." And those lines are beautiful. And he mentions the sunward sailing cranes, which is also in the first verse. I'm going to read to you the poem, because I read this poem as a youth, and it was another line that impacted me. I don't think as profoundly, but that stuck with me and impacted me. And I read it as a Christian, already as a convinced Christian. And one of the things that we have to realize about beauty is that to the godless, beauty is at once both compelling and, well, what's the opposite of compelling? Right? It makes one want to reject it, right? Compelling and impelling. I don't know. Repelling. That's what it is. So, beauty both compels and repels the unbeliever. And God softens the heart. And so this poem ends in what Lewis surely would have found to be tasteless and repellent, but is beautiful. And I'm going to read this poem to you. Tegner's Drapa. I heard a voice that cried, "Balder the Beautiful is dead, and through the misty air passed like the mournful cry of sunward sailing cranes. I saw the pallid corpse of the dead sun borne through the northern sky. Blasts from Niflheim lifted the sheeted mists around him as he passed. And the voice forever cried, Balder the Beautiful is dead, and died away through the dreary night in accents of despair. Balder the Beautiful, god of the summer sun, fairest of all the gods, light from his forehead beamed, runes were upon his tongue as on the warrior's sword. All things in earth and air bound were by magic spell never to do him harm, even the plants and stones, all save the mistletoe, the sacred mistletoe. Hoder, the blind old god, whose feet are shod with silence, pierced through that gentle breast with his sharp spear by fraud, made of the mistletoe, the accursed mistletoe. They laid him in his ship with horse and harness, as on a funeral pyre. Odin placed a ring upon his finger and whispered in his ear. They launched the burning ship. It floated far away over the misty sea, till like the sun it seemed, sinking beneath the waves. Balder returned no more. So perish the old gods, but out of the sea of time rises a new land of song, fairer than the old. Over its meadows green walk the young bards and sing. Build it again, O ye bards, fairer than before. Ye fathers of the new race, feed upon morning dew, sing the new song of love. The law of force is dead, the law of love prevails. Thor the thunderer shall rule the earth no more with threats challenge the meek Christ. Sing no more, O ye bards of the north, of Vikings and of Jarls, of the days of Eld, preserve the freedom only, not the deeds of blood. Man, what a poem. The law of force is dead, the law of love prevails. Build it again, fairer than before. That's the stuff that stuck with me. And that would be difficult for a non-Christian reading it. The point is not only to share these beautiful things, but to tell you, make the thing beautiful, make it true, make it good. Truth, goodness, and beauty. And when you do that, it's not going to be winsome to them across the board. Make something beautiful, make it true, make it good, and they will reject it, but they will be haunted by it, and it will hunt them down and devour them. Go ahead and read The Hound of Heaven as your next poem. The peace of Christ be upon you all.
Aí sim é um homem de verdade, não é esses troços do grupo não, essas carcaças velhas, uó, fim de carreira.
Cadê você, profeta, autarquia? Hein? Pedrada no inferno, fala comigo aí, matador de demônio. Hein?